about macro stability, and you start to know what those things mean. And so this Prime Minister is not just concerned with development for development's sake, but development that is sustainable and fiscally responsible. And so at this time, I have the great privilege and pleasure of inviting to address us our Prime Minister, the builder, the Most Honorable Dr. Andrew Holness.
Thank you very much, Kimberly, for mastering this ceremony. Allow me to acknowledge the ministers who are here. We had cabinet running a little bit later than we had anticipated, and so for those persons who came on time, I accept that you understand. I have to acknowledge the Custos of St. Anne, who is present here because he's a very happy man for this project. And of course, the MP for the parish of St. Anne, Crystal Lee. And our partner, China Harbour, Mr. Gui. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this ceremony as we witness the signing of a revised memorandum of understanding between the government of Jamaica through NROC and the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, and our long-standing partner in infrastructure development, the China Harbour Engineering Company. Today's signing signals vision, confidence, and a continued commitment to transforming Jamaica's infrastructure. The MOU will be valid for the next 2 years. It facilitates critical feasibility and impact assessment for the proposed extension of the North-South Highway westward to Discovery Bay in St. Anne and eastward to Tower Isle in St. Mary. If you're looking on this screen, the blue is it, that's the color, would be representing the westward expansion between Miami Bay and Discovery Bay. And is that purple or pink? Let's say pink. That represents the expansion from Miami Bay to Tower Isle. Infrastructure ultimately is about people, but more so it is about productivity and mobility and the promise of a better life. It lays the literal and figurative foundation for long-term national development. As you know, we have made major investments to expand and modernize Jamaica's road network. These investments are guided by the understanding that roads are the engines of commerce, they are conduits of opportunity, and catalysts of national cohesion. The North-South Highway, commissioned over a decade ago, has become a symbol of this transformation, a modern corridor linking the capital and the industrial centers to the vibrant coastal towns of northwestern Jamaica. But development never stands still. As our economy and tourism sector expands and more Jamaicans travel for work, school, and leisure, our road network faces increasing pressure. Traffic studies confirm what commuters have been saying for the past decade. The existing North Coast Highway corridor is overburdened. Congestion now hampers productivity, it compromises safety, and it is a limiting factor on our growth potential. To address this, we have two complementary projects. The first is the North Coast Highway Improvement Project, which will expand and widen the existing North Coast Highway. And two, the extension of the north-south toll highway, both westwards and eastwards, as I had pointed out before. The proposed highway section or extension includes two segments. The westward section, as I had said before, from Miami Bay to Discovery Bay in St. Ann, and that is approximately 25.2 kilometers. And eastwards from Miami Bay to Tower Isle in St. Mary, and that's approximately 15 kilometers. This MOU pertains to the proposed extension comprising of the two segments that I had mentioned earlier. We have learned some important lessons from the Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project from Harborview to Morant Bay and beyond. Attempting to upgrade a heavily used roadway without providing an alternate route will cause significant disruption and dislocation. And we saw that consistently when we were improving the South Coast Highway corridor. And even to this day, we are still having challenges because the truth is we were not able to divert traffic onto an alternate route. So we were literally building the road while we were driving on it. It created significant dislocations for residents, for businesses. Now, could you imagine if we decided to carry out an improvement work on the existing highway from Miami Bay to Discovery Bay, where all the hotels are along the corridors? The major connection between St. James coming into Kingston would have to pass through that corridor. All the towns along that corridor. Can you imagine a cruise ship waiting in port for its passengers to return from the various excursions that they are on, and the bus is stuck in traffic because the best ever weekend party was on? It would be real challenges. And so we are going to pursue both projects, both the upgrade of the existing highway and the extension of the north-south highway, but we're going to be strategic. We're going to do the north-south highway extension, toll extension first before we undertake any upgrade or construction on the existing alignment. Under this agreement, CHEC will conduct all necessary studies, technical, financial, environmental, and social, and I just love to say this, at no cost to the government. Let me be frank. Sometimes we believe that the highway construction begins when we start to see clearing of the site. That's the time when the public believes that road work is going to start. They have to see some equipment move onto the road, and then they say, yes, road construction begins. But I'm going to be at pains to explain, as I have done on several occasions, that the work actually starts when we make the decision that we are going to be doing the feasibility studies. And oftentimes, not enough resources are placed at the disposal of our road development agencies, whether it is the NWA or NROC, so that they can undertake the planning work and the pre-feasibility work to ensure that when we actually start excavation for the site, we are excavating in the right place. Oftentimes, because we don't emphasize the planning element of the infrastructure, when we get to the actual physical turning of the soil or clearing of the pathways, we end up in areas that cost us far more to construct than if we had spent the resources on doing the feasibility that would have guided us away from some of the difficult areas. And I say this because the construction of the existing North-South Highway faced some of those challenges, where we ended up on certain alignments that cost us quite a bit and even delayed the completion, as we had to find creative engineering solutions to some of the problems that we encountered. This administration has taken a different approach. We are investing more and more into the planning of the infrastructure work. And so China Harbour, which has been here with us as our partner, has significant expertise in this area. They have developed the existing North-South Highway, so they would have become very intimate with the terrain, so they would have a better understanding of the challenges. And so it makes sense that they undertake the feasibility studies that need to be done. And just to repeat, these feasibility studies include not just the engineering and geotechnical, but the financial and some environmental work as well, to ensure that whatever we do does not unduly interfere with our environment. Czech has been our trusted partner in these matters for over a decade. And they have done several major projects, including the North-South Highway, but they are also doing the Montego Bay Perimeter Road and all the other works associated with that. They are close to completing the Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project, and they are about to begin the Port Antonio bypass. Now, why are we doing all of these roads? Because the public listening would be saying, you know, these highways are fine, I like them, they make Jamaica look modern, I get to where I'm going quicker, and I'm sure every member of the public would agree that we need to improve the corridor between Miami Bay and Discovery Bay. The snippet that was shown of the traffic at standstill because of an event, nobody would question that this is an expenditure that needs to be done. But in the back of the mind of the public is still the concern that I want the road that passes my house to be fixed. And if you were to travel into some of our rural communities, I've traveled around Jamaica. There's scarcely a community I have not been to or an area I have not visited. And yes, our local roads, particularly in rural communities, many of them are in a state of serious disrepair. And the question is, how do we treat with this? Couldn't we have taken the resources that will eventually be used in this and fix those roads? And the answer is yes, we could. But what you want is to generate the resources, to have a stream of revenue coming in that can be dedicated to fixing those roads. Not just a one-off fixing where you could only fix some of the roads. What we're trying to do, and just to bring the public into the conversation and the understanding, is to build the highways that generate the economic activity that then generates the revenues that we then direct to the roads that pass by your home. And if you think about it, yes, you have to leave your home, you drive on the bad road, but then you get on the highway and you get to work. Now, when you get to work, we want you to be productive. We want you to have a shorter travel time. And we want to be able to move goods around the country quickly, from production outlet to market point of consumption. And we want to increase that speed. And it is the highways that do that. Once we build out that highway network around Jamaica, which is the intention of the government, the intention of the government is to build a highway network around Jamaica that you can get around Jamaica in less than a day. And smooth roads that connect you to anywhere in Jamaica. That's the intention. That will create the economic engine that will generate the revenues that we will then use to fix all the roads, including the roads that pass by your house, the roads in your local community. And to show you that the government is serious about this, the first opportunity that we have gotten to make a massive allocation towards repairing in a systematic way, not patching, but full rehabilitation, to give you a carpet road, as we call it, is the Spark program. An allocation of over $45 billion. Where is that coming from? We're not borrowing it. It is coming from the economy doing better, and we are able to make the allocation. But that's just one allocation. Where is the next allocation going to come from? The next allocation has to come from further economic growth. And how are we going to spur that further economic growth? We're going to make our country seamless in travel. So take, for example, how this will impact tourism. If you are a tourist, and we're not building roads necessarily only for tourists, but we're building roads for our tourism product, which is very important. If you fly for an hour and a half from Miami into Sangster International Airport, and then it takes you 2.5 hours to 3 hours to reach your hotel in, let's say, Negril or Grand Bahia in St. Anne, you're going to say, boy, it's not worth it. I want to get to, my hotel 10, 20 minutes at most after I land, especially if it's for vacation. So your road network has to be so well developed that once you come off of the plane, you're going to get to anywhere in Jamaica very quickly. And that is what we want. Now, once Jamaica is known for its seamlessness, then you're going to get more people coming to Jamaica for tourism, because they say Jamaica's infrastructure means that I get sun, sea, sand, and seamlessness. Oh, there's another S that we add to it: safety and security. Right? But that's how you develop the economy. Right? So if we make these kinds of strategic investments, as we have made a strategic investment in bringing down our murder rate, people look at Jamaica and say, Jamaica is now safer. We made the investment in our roads, and we can move around, and you can move from cruise ship port to go and, go to Duns River Falls or go to whichever other attraction you want to go to and get back to your cruise ships quickly. They say, Jamaica is a perfect place to come. More tourism, more revenues for the country. But just consider that for the 50,000 Jamaicans who are still unemployed, a part of the problem of the unemployment, and we pick this up in the polls that we have done and the surveys that we have done, is that there is still a fairly high level of persons who are not employed. They are in the labor force, they are seeking jobs, but they are not employed, but they are in rural communities. And you ask yourself the question, why is that so? Because whenever I'm here in Kingston or in St. James, in Montego Bay, the business community tells me we can't find people. There are about 50,000 persons there. Part of the reason is that they're unemployed, is that they don't have skills. But another part of it is that transportation is an issue for them. Distance of travel and cost of travel. Now, if you put in the infrastructure that makes travel easier, then you can bring more people in. They can come into Kingston for training, which is one of the issues we have, because that residual number of persons who are not trained, not skilled, and who live far from where the work is, once you put in proper road infrastructure, it makes it easier for them to travel for work. It also makes it easier for the government to extend public transportation, as you are seeing happening now with the expansion of the JUTC routes into areas like Morant Bay, into Mandeville, because we now have the road network that can bring subsidized public transportation closer to where people live. It also helps with things like issues such as informal settlements. If transportation is easier, then I don't have to settle close to where the work is. I can go back home. What plagued our tourism for many years is that people had to leave their home and informally settle in a community close to a hotel, for example. That's an attempt to cut transportation costs. So we take all these things into consideration strategically when we're making these decisions about improving our infrastructure. So I know every Jamaican is happy that the government is going to finally address the Miami Bay to Discovery Bay corridor. Whenever any show is being kept, and I've attended a few of the show, I went to the Bujo, the intimate, yes, concert, and I was stuck in traffic for a little while, and I reflected on it, and I said, we must do something about this. And there have been several events there that whenever there is an event, it's just total chaos. We're going to fix it. It's not going to be fixed tomorrow. This is the start of it. We're going to study the problem, figure out the proper routing for the extension, and execute. But the development is not just for that corridor. We're also looking at developing the extension of the toll road, which will become a bypass for the town of Ocho, which is also very congested. And, the potential of Ocho is literally being undermined because of the congestion of the town. So we are also going to develop a leg heading eastwards around Ocho. So with that, travel would be made much easier in Jamaica. But the effort right now is for the leg from Miami Bay to Discovery Bay. Now, once that is done and traffic can be diverted, then we will move full force to improve the actual road corridor that exists now. And so Jamaicans will have two routes to get to Trelawney and into St. James, going through St. Anne. Now, just in closing, the Miami Bay to Discovery Bay corridor has a particular energy, which I haven't seen in any other area in Jamaica, in terms of how it is developing. Housing is exploding in that area, but also commercial and light industrial is emerging in a significant way. We cannot allow development to outpace critical infrastructure. That has been the problem in Jamaica. Private developers have said, I want to build this, I want to build that. And they have gone ahead and built housing and put up lovely buildings, but the infrastructure has lagged behind. Now what we have tried to do is to keep a pace with development and go ahead of development. So we intend to go ahead and build the roads even before the development comes. In this case, we're still trying to catch up, but we are not too far behind. The extension of the North-South Highway will create new lands for housing opportunities and other developments, which will ensure that the government can have a more direct and strategic intervention in the planning of the area. So yes, development is going along the existing corridor, but once we put in the roadway through the extension of the North-South Highway, we can then designate other lands for development and other lands for housing, which would then ensure that you don't have an overcrowding and an overburdening in the areas that are now currently being developed. And so that's the thinking. So ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to be signing or witnessing the signing of the MOU today. And in closing, let me thank our partners, CHEC, NROC, and the wider public service for the work done so far. And let us Yes, Minister of Water. So let me thank again NROC, CHEC, and the entire public service for bringing us to this point. Let us get this done. And what's the timeline? It's 2 years to do this, the feasibilities? Not fixed, but you will try and do it very quickly. Yes, very good. So the Jamaican people can rest assured that work has now begun on this new corridor.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I usually don't do